Welcome to this session on exponentially scaling climate solutions to phase out fossil fuels. And it's brought to you by the Exponential Roadmap Initiative. And with me in the studio, I'm joined by four gentlemen here with me and also two people on Zoom. So let me introduce the team here. Johan Falk, you're a CEO and co-founder of Exponential Roadmap Initiative. And next to you is Henrik Tegnér, you're EVP Strategy and Sustainability at AFRY. And then we have Niklas Kaskela, Public Affairs Manager at Oatly. And last but not least, Hugh Garnett, Senior Program Manager, Real Assets, IIGCC. And with me on Zoom, I have in the studio in Stockholm, I have Johan Mandarik Roinonen, you're Head of Sustainability at Stegra, formerly known as H2 Green Steel. Good to see you, Johan. And also next to you on the Zoom frame here is Priya Bullar, COO and co-founder of Plan Boo. So welcome, Priya. Terrific to have you join us too. So let's start by asking Johan Falk a few questions to set the scene here. We all know that we need to phase out fossil fuels, so we need to do it quickly. But how about the importance of scaling climate solutions? Can you please say a few things about this?
Yes, science is very clear. We should halve emissions by 2030 and protect nature and move towards net zero. But we all know that we are not on track. And one of the reasons for that is that the solutions we need to shift out the fossil economy, they are not scaling sufficiently fast. We do have solutions like renewable energy, electrical vehicles, which are following this exponential trajectory and which has passed the tipping point. But we have a number of solutions we had to take over the tipping point and shift the curves to the left. So it's incredibly important that we don't just focus on the down curves, but actually the up curves.
Thank you, Johan.
Yes.
You have developed a framework to qualify these climate innovations and solutions. Why have you done that?
It's so important that the solution companies get sufficient recognition, both by financiers, by society, as well as by customers. So that is one of the reasons. It's also important over time that the large transformative companies start to set science-aligned targets to scale up climate solutions. All targets are around cutting emissions so far. So that is the reason why we developed this particular climate solutions framework, because it's also about integrity. If we should be able to do this, we need to have a firm and strict framework so actually companies can qualify their solutions according to this particular framework.
Speaking of frameworks, you have also developed another framework. It's a framework, or it's rather more of a matrix for professional service providers. How does that work?
Yeah, that's right. Because companies providing services like consultancy services, advertising services, engineering services, so think about it, their scope 1 and 2 and 3 emissions are normally quite insignificant. Very important, they need to reduce towards net zero, but their major impact actually comes from which type of customers they serve and what is the purpose of the project. So we actually launched this particular matrix as a strategic tool for companies actually to apply to transform their portfolio to align with the 1.5 ambition.
So Johan, why do we need different frameworks? Can you tell us a bit more about this, please?
Yes, going back again to the first category where we're talking about specific products. This particular framework, the requirement to qualify as a climate solution is basically aligned with the global carbon law from Johan Rockström. So it basically states that a product need to have at least 50% lower footprint than the market average solution. Preferably much more, which we will hear from Stegra, that you actually might be down at 80-90%, of course. And over time you need to still reduce your footprint to be under that particular line. It also need to follow key guardrails in order to protect nature and so on. So that's absolutely essential. So that's the first group. The second group we talked about is enabling services, which requires other type of tools. And the third is about companies and solutions which remove carbon and protect nature. So there are basically three categories which can be where we can categorize solutions as climate solutions.
Well, thank you very much for setting the stage here, Johan Falk. Let's now open up the conversation and include also the people on Zoom, of course. So I'd like to start with Johan Manderik from the Stockholm studio. Would like to highlight each of your solutions here, because we are indeed talking about solutions. So Johan Manderik Roinanen, could you please share with the audience here a few thoughts on the Stegra solution?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. So Stegra, formerly known as H2 Green Steel, is a company founded just 4 years ago, and where our purpose is to decarbonize hard to abate industries. And we do that by really at scale producing green hydrogen, green iron, and green steel. And we have our first giga project in Sweden, up in the northern part of Sweden, in Boden, where we're currently building a 2.5 million ton green steel plant. And so the green steel that we're producing will abate up to 95% of CO2 compared to conventional steel.
That's massive.
And we will be ready in 2026.
It's quite impressive indeed, it is. Thank you very much, Johan. So Niklas, you go next. What is your climate solution, and where are you at in scaling it?
Yes, so I'm representing Oatly here, and Oatly is the world's largest oat-based drink company, and we've been a front runner in scaling plant-based solutions that can replace animal-based food. We know that the food system causes about 1/3 of our global emissions is linked to the food system, and a vast majority of those emissions come from animal-based products. So we really need to do something about that. And I think Oatly is not about minimizing harm, but actually maximizing positive impact, how we can switch consumers to a more healthy, to a more climate and environmentally friendly option. So like we heard here earlier, it's not about being less bad, it's about being more good. And I think our biggest impact comes from converting people away from those products that are not only harmful for the planet, but quite often for our health as well, towards better options.
Well, thank you very much, and it's fantastic. I've been at several COPs now, and initially you couldn't get oat milk anywhere, and now they're everywhere.
Yeah, and
not always your brand, but it's still, I mean, you're pushing for change here, and you're a big part of that.
I've had to have some coconut milk here, unfortunately. It's pretty good.
Actually,
but I have to say one thing, that this is only the second COP where food is on the agenda, or there's a specific thematic day for food. So I think we're quite late to the game here when it comes to food.
So we need to work hard, huh? Welcome back. We had a power failure here in half of the media center, so that took a bit of a fiddling to get it done, but now we're back. So we'll continue on this session on climate solution, exponential climate solutions. And we're talking about the specific solutions that we have in this panel, the companies that are sharing their visions on their solutions here. And it's now a pleasure to turn back to Priya, who is from Planet Boo. Please tell us about your solution.
To what exactly it is that we do, I want to talk about the why. So Plan B is a carbon removal company, and while we've talked about the importance of phasing down fossil fuels, that is just one piece of the puzzle. So in April 2022, as we know, the UNFCCC declared that carbon removal is now unavoidable if we are to stay within 1.5 degrees of global warming. So carbon removal is the process of removing CO2 from the atmosphere and keeping it out as permanently as possible. So we need to do this because even if we were to reduce our emissions to zero today, we've already released too many historically to not have any climate implications. So carbon removal is an incredible solution, as we can remove emissions from today, from last year, from the year before, and we can keep going. We could actually take our Earth's atmosphere emissions to pre-industrial times and even heal the planet. So there are many different types of carbon removal, and at Plan B, we focus on biochar. So we're able to draw down CO2 from the atmosphere and also remediate some of the most degraded soils in the world. So we have 8 projects to date in 7 different countries, and we work right from Colombia over to Tanzania. We've removed 10,000 tons of CO2 to date, and we're on track to remove 100,000 next year and onto 100 million by 2030.
Super interesting, Priya. Thank you so much. And I'm turning now to Henrik from AFRY. You're a service provider. Now could you please tell us what kind of services you provide that are related to climate solutions?
Of course, thank you very much. Yeah, so we are, as you say, an engineering company. That means that we help design many of the solutions that are needed, both for the energy transition, also the green industrial transition. And I could say that we work with at least 2 of the 3 other companies that are here on some of their then innovative solutions that they have that are really then climate solutions. And I mean, for us, it is also quite important to understand, because even if we then are not the climate solution ourselves, our clients have the climate solution. And for us, that is quite important to then be able to categorize what is then what. So how do we understand the footprint that we have, and how progressive our project portfolio and client portfolio is. And that's where we're also pioneering then together with the Exponential Roadmap initiative on this professional services matrix that Johan was mentioning in the introduction.
Well, thank you very much, Henrik from AFRY. Turning now to you, at the Institutional Investors Group on Climate Change, it's a long title. How do you work with climate solutions?
Yeah, thank you. It's a snappy long title. So yeah, we have 400 institutional investor members, and we really work to address climate risk within their portfolios and ensure that they can take advantage of the opportunities of climate mitigation and adaptation. We have what we call the Net Zero Investment Framework. That's the most widely used investment framework by asset owners and asset managers to set targets, develop transition plans, and as a part of that, what we do is we recommend that investors set targets to allocate capital to climate solutions. Really, as we've heard already, is because we know that we don't just need to drive down emissions, we really need to scale up investment into these solutions. And so we're continuing to sort of increase our support to members in this space. Last week we published some climate solutions guidance on renewable energy infrastructure, really looking to build on the announcement from COP29 last year around the commitment to triple renewables by 2030, to really look to have our members be able to contribute and attribute their contributions to that goal. So provide guidance on how they can do that. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at, and we're obviously looking to scale up guidance elsewhere, because that's obviously not the only climate solution out there. But due to sort of the outsized role that energy generation plays, the initial focus is certainly on that renewable assets.
Well, thank you very much indeed, you. You mentioned earlier the importance of qualifying climate solutions, so let's dig a bit deeper into this topic. Let's start with you, Priya. What does this entail from your perspective, the qualifying of the solutions?
Mm-hmm. So essentially we're talking about frameworks here, right? And frameworks that can act as a guide. So a place that companies or individuals can go to understand more and to get a recommended path that they should take when approaching something far bigger, than let's say a company's own remit or business operation. And yeah, in a world of increasing mistrust and misinformation, I think these guides, these frameworks can actually create a momentum of change, because they can unite us all together on one page. In carbon removal, in the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen a number of different certification models and standards coming in, which is really establishing biochar as a leading form of carbon removal. And today, 92% of all carbon removal comes from biochar. And so while this work is technically happening on the ground, it is the likes of these standards that is what is legitimizing it in front of big buyers and financiers. But I wanted to note that the guides, the frameworks, are only as effective as the belief systems that they're made with, and then the action that is taken from that. So at COP, we have an example of a place where there's loads of roadmaps and points for frameworks that are laid out. However, we haven't always seen that translate into action. And that is, essentially what we need to do here. So qualifying solutions and building guides are super important, but they need to be supported with radical, urgent action.
Indeed. Thank you, Priya. Turning now to you from Stegra. What is your take on this?
of course, project financing will always be important for us, and hence the trust from the investor community needs to be there. I mean, we do that by showing that we are, able to actually do what we promise that we're doing, but also having that stat that we are a climate solution company. We have embedded. I think that will be really, really important in the years to come, and I'm hoping that the broader investor community will see the value.
Well, thank you very much, Johan, from Stockholm, from Stegra. Henrik, I'm curious to the AFRY perspective of qualifying the climate solutions.
Yeah, I mean, we have some different perspectives on that, and I would like to say that, I mean, we have been thinking quite hard about how do we view our portfolio and how can we categorize it in an efficient way. And we have been looking actually at different frameworks over the years here to try to find a good way. But actually it was in last COP in Dubai where we had a pretty long discussion with Johan and the ERI team, and where you said that you had this idea about developing the professional services framework and looking at how these exponential solutions get into that. And I think that for us sounded very, very interesting, because for us, I mean, we have the situation that we have many, many customers and we have many, many projects every year, right? So I think it's a little bit different if you're a manufacturing company, you have factories, you have maybe many factories, but you don't have thousands of factories, right? And we have maybe 90,000 projects every year, and we have maybe 15,000 clients every year. So we need to find an efficient way for how we can then categorize both on the client level but also then on the project level. And we thought that the guidelines that you put forward here on the professional services matrix and the exponential solutions, that really was something that was workable for us, and that we could work on I mean, we want to be, of course, as precise as possible when we do this categorization, because we want to be able to come up with a number of how many of our solutions are in that category of projects. But I think we have now at least a pilot where we can show that it seems to work, and we're now looking at how we can expand that pilot to cover all of our revenue. We cover about half of our revenue right now, but I hope that by the middle of next year we will cover all of our revenue under this framework.
Thank you. Getting there. Thank you.
We're getting there.
Yeah. So you, from the investor perspective, what can you say from that side?
Yeah, so I think we see frameworks being absolutely vital in this space. So obviously we have our own frameworks, but it's also those broader regulatory frameworks that are there in place, and having that supportive policy environment is absolutely crucial for scaling climate solutions. Be that real economy policy. So for example, I mentioned infrastructure earlier. Renewables and grid connection, that's a real problem. So that's something that really urgently needs to be addressed. Looking at transmission, distribution, that's a real challenge, and if we can address some of those issues, we'll see some of those renewables scale and come onto the grid much quicker. The other place I would just say is also on that sort of other sustainable finance regulation piece, which is also really providing sort of guidance for investors on where to channel their capital and what is considered a climate solution, and having those strong signals and ensuring that those are ambitious and aligned with what investors expect. That's really crucial for driving that capital and ensuring that we can sort of scale up investments into these solutions.
Thank you. Handing back the microphone to Nicholas, please. From the Oatly perspective, what can you say about this?
Well, I think frameworks are important, but I think many of the frameworks we have today in climate and sustainability overall are kind of looking at it from the wrong perspective. It's when you think about carbon accounting, for example, or many sustainability targets or climate targets, the companies said it's about minimizing the harm that they cause, reducing their emissions. And there's not much acknowledgement about like solutions that replace existing solutions with better ones. So how do we create avoided emissions, for example? How do we convert people away from using fossil fuels to something else? How do we convert from using animal-based food to plant-based food, etc.? So we're thinking also not about reducing our footprint, but actually maximizing our handprint. And the handprint is how many people we can convert away from animal-based dairy products to plant-based. And there's a big climate impact there, and it's much bigger than if we try to, or obviously we need to work on reducing our own emissions, that's for sure. But the bigger impact comes from converting consumers away from that animal-based product. So, but many of the frameworks that we have don't really recognize this yet, at least. But I know there's a lot happening in this space. But the sort of major frameworks, science-based targets, etc., they're pretty tricky for a company that's all about growing a climate solution.
Thank you, Niklas. A good perspective here. So, Johan, any reflections on the handprint versus footprint perspective, and also what gaps we see in general?
Yeah, so what we are addressing here is, as you call, the handprint side, or basically the up curves. So it's complementary to SBTI, and as far as I see, there will be links in between in the next steps, because you both need to have the reduction targets, even if you start from a low point, but you also over time need to set targets to actually scale up the solution side, and then you need some kind of qualification. A key point is that the solutions need to scale as quickly as ever possible and exponentially. Therefore, you can't just apply absolute targets. So what we built into this framework, which I didn't mention before, is that the recommendation is to apply intensity targets, which means that you don't reduce the possibility to grow, but still you need to have a reduction target, and we need to fulfill the guardrails. So that is essential. So Oatly, we have worked together with Oatly to qualify your products as climate solutions through the life cycle, and quite extensive work. And we also, of course, work with Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance on aligning whatever we do. It's important moving forward that we avoid fragmentation. But when we developed these particular solutions, we also look at simplicity, and that it should primarily drive action while keeping integrity. So it's a fine balance there.
Thank you for clarifying this, Johan. So let's finish with two questions here about the major blockers and also each of your steps of scaling. So let's start with the blockers. Any of you can start. I'm looking at you, Hendrik. What major blockers do you see?
Yeah, but I think that we talk about standards and how to get to definitions here, and I think that, I mean, for us as a company, it's also important to remove uncertainty, and then, I mean, we can handle a lot of uncertainty in our company, but these kind of outside uncertainties we of course like to limit, because when we define something then as a climate solution, we also want to know that holds, that definition is good, not only today but also for the future, because many of the clients we work with and the investments that they make, that's for 20, 30, 40 years or even longer, right? And then we need to have at least a degree of certainty that over time these definitions that we set in place are also holding. And I think that's one aspect of blocker. And I mean, we have been working now on the framework together with ERI, and we're very happy with it. But if it's only us who adopt it, then it doesn't become much of a standard, right? So of course it needs to also spread. So let's see if that works. I would be very happy if it does. Sorry, second blocker just is I think data. And a lot of people talk about data, and it's always easy to get stuck in that, and we don't want to do that. But anyway, I think that for us just to do this, for example, then the categorization of our clients, how sustainable are they according to this framework, right? That's something that we now do, but that's something that for sure that data could be made available from somewhere else according to some standards, and that would of course simplify a lot. So I think this data standardization and how we exchange data between companies in the value chains, that will be very important, I think, as well.
Thank you, Hendrik. Let's turn now to the Zoom guests here. Johan from Stegra, what major blockers are you looking at?
So I think I would really like to tag along there. I mean, I think awareness and visibility of the climate solutions companies framework is essential, because if this gets picked up, for example, in the broader investor community, if they see the real value of climate solution companies, then we will get access to more financing. We will be able to build more sites, not only the one in Boden, but all over the world. So I think awareness and visibility, I would say.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you, Johan, from Stegra. Priya, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, in carbon removal, what we're seeing in terms of blockers is a slowness to respond to the global call to action. Corporates, companies that have a major part to play in scaling carbon markets have not been buying or investing at the volumes that the industry has needed to see. And hey, I don't blame them. For many years, it's been a bit like the Wild West out there, you know, with misinformation, you know, lack of evidence for validated projects. And this is just creating mistrust and skepticism. So in that way, I can see what an enabler can be is having robust ways that we can bring trust to carbon markets. And that is what Planbu is doing with our digital tech-enabled tracking solution. We can actually show in real time the carbon removal is taking place on the ground with the projects that we work with. But at the same time, it's not just science and technology that is going to get us out of this. You know, we need climate solutions that are made with great minds and also made with hearts as well. So by sharing the real life human stories of the projects and the communities that we work with, we want to show the buyers and show the world that, you know, we are all in this together. And then finally, just wanted to share that really to scale these climate solutions, we're going to need diversity and more representation, including more than we've got here on the panel today. We need to keep, for adaptation of climate solutions, we really need to include all voices.
Thank you. So investments keep coming up as a blocker here, but also an enabler, I guess, if we get it right. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think obviously, you know, we're here at COP29, one of the biggest items on the agenda, and a lot of the buzz has been around nationally determined contributions and the revised NDCs that will be submitted, or have already been submitted, but will be submitted by the latest end of next year. And I think, you know, one of the things that we really want to see from these is that they become investable, that we can kind of get that policy and enabling environment right for capital to really scale and flow to the right places. So be that having granular sectoral pathways in that, you know, ensure that there's harmonization within those as well. And that's something that we're really working quite closely with our investor members and with countries to really drive that. And as a part of that, that will send the signal to, if we can get those right, it sends signals to investors on where to allocate capital and to allocate it to the right place and really scale some of these solutions that we've seen. And obviously, you know, I agree with all the other blockers and barriers that have been mentioned on this panel, and also concur on the diversity point as well. I'm very conscious that I'm sat here with 3 other men.
Well, thank you so much, you. Niklas?
Yeah, we're almost all of us wearing blue suits here, like most people at COP. I would add one more element to this. I think, you know, climate solution companies are not only about the products or services that they create or that they have, but also about their wider impact on the world. If you think about like changing the food system, it's not enough to have a good product that tastes good. There are a lot of norms that are against us, a lot of policies that are against it. It's not a level playing field, and we need to, like, these barriers need to be tackled somehow. They need to be challenged, and that can be done through advocacy, campaigning, changing attitudes and norms. And at Oatly, that's a huge part of our work, actually. It's not just the product, it's about our wider impact. How do we influence policies, or how do we influence consumer behavior or attitude, etc. So I think we don't really have a standard for that yet. How do we measure that? But I think we should start thinking about that. There's some really interesting stuff happening coming from the University of Oxford about thinking about corporate spheres of influence that can be measured then as well. And advocacy work is part of that. A lot of companies are part of industry associations that might be not the most progressive ones, for example. What if climate solution companies created their own associations, like Oatly has done in many of its markets, creating associations for plant-based food and allying with our competitors basically to change norms and policies to create a level playing field for plant-based products. So I would take a more holistic view here.
Well, I know Oatly, for instance, you did this campaign or try to make change the policy of the school milk directive in the European Union, right? That the cow's milk is still subsidized, but not the plant-based milks.
Exactly.
And you did go together with other companies to get that done.
We've done that, and most recently, for example, we worked together with climate NGOs in Patagonia to encourage people to vote in the EU elections and vote for the planet. And that's not something that most companies do. So like really sort of engaging also at the political level I think is a climate solution, and more companies should be bolder on that front.
Thank you, Niklas. So Johan, challenges, blockers. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, but also on the opportunity side, I can mention.
Yeah, but
we
we'll
know
slide over to the opportunities
Okay.
because we only have a few more minutes, and it's lovely to have you each have your say about where you're going next in terms of opportunities. So go ahead, Johan.
on the opportunities.
Yes.
On the opportunities, yes. Well, first, okay, we are of course working together, climate solutions companies to sort of accelerate this narrative, which is incredibly important. We need to continue to work on aligning, of course, the frameworks and the standards influencing the frameworks. So the more we can actually align with corporate finance, with the other standards, so we can get sort of a clear landscape for companies how to maneuver, which is not overcomplicated. So that is one part of it. The second, where I see an opportunity is now when the companies are developing transition plans, so there will basically be a requirement, an expectation on all companies to have transition plans. That to be progressive should be integrated in your business plan, actually also considering how you shift your portfolio and scaling up solutions. And if we then match that on the national, the NDCs and the national action plans, these can also include scaling up of climate solutions. So then we can create this virtuous loop basically between corporates and nations and make it more